You don't know when exactly you broke. You just know that with every passing day, you're losing another piece of your will. You go to work, you smile, you talk to people like everything's fine, but deep down, you're empty. Not because life is too hard, but because you've gotten used to running. Running from the truth that you're drifting, that the old wounds never healed. They've just been buried, waiting to explode and destroy you from within. Others look at you and think you're strong because you don't complain, but you know it's not strength, it's paralysis. And if you don't stop and face it, you'll die the slowest death possible. No goals, no feelings, no memories worth holding on to. This video isn't for people who want comfort. It's for the ones who've had enough. Enough to know that if they don't change now, there'll be nothing left to save. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and like if you're new here. It helps me keep bringing you more valuable content. There's something most people don't dare to say. Real compassion doesn't come from kindness. It's not born from meditation, positive podcasts, or morning doses of moral philosophy. No, real deep compassion only shows up after life has torn you to pieces. When you've been on your knees in pain, with no one around, and you finally realize, so this is what it feels like to be left behind. I used to think kind people were that way because they were raised right, because they had generous hearts. But the more I live and the more pain I see, the more I realize the people who truly understand and care are usually the ones who've been hurt the worst. They've been misunderstood, abandoned, left in silence when they called out in desperation. They've reached for help and no one pulled them up. And because of that, they know exactly what it feels like to be stepped on, rejected, treated like trash. So they don't laugh at other people's pain anymore. They don't throw out empty lines like it'll be fine when someone's breaking down. They don't judge easily, don't rush to conclusions. They're quieter, deeper, sharper in how they see the world. Because they understand. Some things hurt so bad, no one can bear them. Some people just hide it better than others. That kind of compassion isn't weak. It isn't soft, it isn't sentimental. It's cold steel. It's seeing someone fail and not looking down on them. Because you know life can destroy anyone, no matter how tough they are. And this matters. Real compassion never makes excuses for laziness or weakness. It doesn't lie with sweet talk like you're okay when you're clearly living like hell. It doesn't soothe you with comforting nonsense. It tells you the truth. It looks at your wounds and says, yeah, you're hurting. Now get up. No one's coming to save you. It's the kind of compassion that doesn't tolerate self-pity, that doesn't feed the victim mindset, that doesn't pat you on the back so you can keep blaming the world. I've seen men climb out of hell. No parents, no money, no one to lead the way. Just pain. Pain as their only companion. But instead of using it to hate the world, they used it to understand it. Not because they were nice, but because they knew that place, that bottom, is so brutal, no one deserves to stay there if there's even the slightest chance of escape. And these men, the ones who understand their emotions, are the only ones who truly control them. They don't let their emotions dictate their actions. They're compassionate but not soft. Kind but not weak. They'll give you a chance, but they won't hesitate to leave you behind if you refuse to grow. You don't learn compassion from moral lessons. You learn it when life charges you the highest price. Pain so deep you no longer care about anything. That kind of true compassion, it's the foundation of all Stoic values. Because when life breaks you and you still choose not to become cruel, that's real power. And when you meet someone in pain, you don't say, poor you. You look them in the eye and say, I get it, and I believe you can make it through, if you've got the guts to do what it takes. I'm not saying any of this to sound poetic. I've screamed into the night with fists clenched, not to hit anyone, but to keep myself from losing it. I've sat in a parked car for hours with the engine off, staring into nothing. I've walked out of a room the person I loved most would never walk out of again. And after it all, I've learned this. Suffering doesn't make you worse. It makes you deeper, if, and only if, you're willing to learn from it. And this is the intersection of compassion and emotional strength. When you've got enough empathy to understand someone's pain, but also enough control not to be consumed by it. When you see someone broken and you understand, but you don't pull them up with soft words. You just stand there, reach out your hand, and say, "I'm not carrying you, but if you're ready to walk, I'll go with you." And here's the strange thing. It's the people who've been to hell who are the calmest when chaos hits, because they've already faced total collapse. Because lightning doesn't surprise them anymore. They don't panic. They don't run. They don't blame. They stand still. They observe, and they strike when it's time. But that ability to keep a cool head in fire, it doesn't come naturally. It comes from all those moments when you thought you wouldn't survive, and yet you did. It comes from those days when you had nothing but yourself, and you still made it out alive. And when you've learned how to hold your ground in the fire, you know exactly what inside you is real. That realness, that's what I'll talk about next. Emotional control. Because no one truly has compassion until they've learned how to be silent without breaking. No one really understands others until they've survived the flames without screaming. There's one thing outsiders often get wrong. They think anyone who speaks little or shows little emotion is repressing something, that they're forcing themselves, silently suffering. Not true. People who've truly been through pain don't need to suppress emotion. They've gone far beyond the point of merely enduring. They don't control their emotions to look tough. They control their emotions because they understand emotions have no right to control them. Anger, sadness, disappointment, despair. Those emotions no longer knock them off course. They're still there, but they don't get dragged along like a blind man chasing howls in the forest. They know how to stop, watch, and wait for the right moment, because they've reacted wrong before and paid dearly for it. I'm not talking about that fake emotionless act you see from guys trying to look cool online. I'm talking about an internal discipline only someone who's been suffocated understands. When you've lashed out and hurt the person you loved most. When you've made a dumbass decision because emotion hijacked your brain. When you let fear destroy the best opportunity of your life. That's when you finally ask yourself, what the hell am I letting run my life? And then you start learning how to cut the fuse the second it sparks. You shut your mouth when angry. You step back when your mind is a mess. You stop reacting on impulse and start choosing your actions with intention. Sounds easy, but you only learn it after losing enough. Here's the thing. Someone who can control their emotions isn't someone who feels nothing. They still feel pain, still feel hurt, still feel anger, but they don't rush to let it out like the crowd. They let it pass through. They don't force it away, but they don't let it take the wheel either. They hold the steering wheel. They're not the car being driven by emotion. I once met a man, lost his wife, lost his job, lost his home, all in 3 months. Others thought he was bottling it up because he was quiet, didn't complain. But no, he was clear as day. He knew he was falling apart, but also knew he had to stand. There was no other choice. His child was still there. His responsibilities were still there. Whining wouldn't help. And in that terrifying silence, I saw steadiness. No one taught him that. Life made him learn. And this is what I learned. Controlling emotion isn't a skill, it's a principle. A person who can't control their emotions is a person who can't control their life. They're led by anger into fights, by anxiety into depression, by jealousy into destroying their own family. They think they're being real with their feelings, but really, they're just puppets. Emotion is not something to obey. It's a signal. It comes to alert you, not to drive your damn life. Only when you master your emotions do you gain what I call inner weight. That weight keeps you from getting sucked into drama, keeps you out of pointless arguments, keeps you from crumbling just because something didn't go your way. And when you have inner weight, you begin to see yourself more clearly. You stop reacting with, "That's just how I am." And you start asking, why am I feeling this way? Why did that hit me? What old wound is still bleeding that I haven't dealt with? That's the part most people avoid. Because looking inside isn't pleasant. But someone who's already known deep suffering, they're no longer afraid. They've already been shattered. So looking at the pieces isn't as scary as letting them keep stabbing you without knowing why. And from that place, they gain what most people never touch, a deep understanding of self. Not from books, not from podcasts, but from smashing face first into truth that can't be denied. And that awareness, that's what turns suffering into strength. Not how much you can endure, but how much you learn about yourself every time you fall. And only when you understand yourself can you start redirecting your life. But not yet. We're not there. That part comes later. What I want you to get right now is this. Controlling your emotions isn't some higher level thing. It's survival. Either you control it, or it slowly kills you. And trust me, once you master the inside, you start seeing the outside with very different eyes. You're no longer dazzled by the shiny. You no longer envy others. You stop chasing cheap things to fill your inner void. Because you've realized nothing out there can fill the hole inside you unless you first figure out what the hell is missing. And that's when you start letting go. Not letting go of responsibility, but letting go of the things you once traded your soul to hold on to. Letting go of material things. Letting go of ego. Letting go of illusions. Because you now know, real value isn't in what you own, it's in what you're willing to walk away from. And from here, the thread naturally leads to the next part, where those who've known pain learn the most important lesson of all. The things we thought mattered didn't. And the thing most worth holding on to was never in our hands. It was always in our character. If you're ready, I'll write that next part for you. Letting go of material things. When you've lost everything, you stop clinging to anything. Once you've come to understand who you really are, once you've stood in the heart of chaos and still kept a steady mind, you begin to see something with sharp clarity. Most of what we call essentials are really just things we use to fill the void inside. Houses, cars, watches, clothes, club memberships, business class seats, perfectly filtered Instagram posts, none of that is inherently wrong. The problem is whether or not you're willing to admit this. You use those things to define your self-worth. I've done it. Like most men, I used to think that if I had more, I'd be respected more. That money would make people listen to me, that driving a nice car would earn me status, that dressing well would keep her from walking away. The truth? I had all those things, and I still felt empty, still scared, still couldn't sleep at night. Because deep down I knew, if it all disappeared tomorrow, I'd lose myself with it. Then one day it did, literally. A collapse at work, one bad decision, one slip, one crisis, and my bank account was nearly drained. Lost the house, lost the stuff, lost the image, lost the sense of who I was. That's when I started learning something no one teaches you in school. Material things don't create value. They only amplify what's already inside you. If you're hollow, money just makes you a more expensive version of hollow. But if you have discipline, depth, and clear thinking, even with nothing in your hands, you still carry a presence that demands respect, because you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Letting go of materialism doesn't mean you reject it. It means you don't let it control you. You don't let it dictate who you are, how you live, or how confident you feel. A man who's lost everything and still survived is no longer threatened by material things. He knows how to rebuild. He doesn't panic when it all falls apart because he knows the only thing worth holding on to isn't in his pocket. It's in his mind. I once saw a rich man so terrified of losing what he had that he nearly lost his mind. Every time the market shifted, he couldn't sleep. He stopped enjoying his meals. He fought with his wife and kids. Every day he lived with one haunting question. If I lose all this, who am I? You don't want that life. That's not freedom. That's a gold-plated prison. On the flip side, I once met an old man living in a run-down rented room with nothing of value. But he sat like a mountain. Every word he spoke was forged from experience. He didn't brag. He didn't fear anyone. He never bowed. He had little, but needed even less to live according to his principles. And because of that, he was richer than most men in luxury cars, terrified of their next mortgage payment. The issue isn't money. The issue is whether your sense of worth depends on it. Do you need a new purchase to feel deserving? Are you so afraid of losing what you have that you'd sacrifice your backbone to keep it? Here's the truth. If you've never lost everything, you don't yet understand freedom. Real freedom doesn't come from having it all. It comes from not needing it and still living with strength, dignity, and clarity. There are some lessons you only learn after you've lost it all. When you've got nothing left to cling to, that's when you realize your hands were full of illusions. When you've got nowhere else to go, that's when you finally turn inward and ask, so how do I actually want to live? And from that moment on, you begin rebuilding from solid ground. You no longer buy things to impress anyone. You no longer wear anything just to get attention. You no longer live for likes. You live in a way that makes you respect yourself. I know some people hearing this will react with, easy to say, but without money, what can you really do? I'm not denying the value of money. I'm not preaching poverty as some kind of virtue. But I'll say this clearly. If you can't live in peace without having much, you'll never find peace even when you have a lot, because you never built anything real inside. And sooner or later, life will come test what you've built. Letting go of materialism is a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with one brutally honest question. What exactly am I living for? If your answer is, to buy this, to own that, to make people believe I'm someone, then you're not really living. You're performing, and you'll be the first audience member who gets exhausted by your own show. I'm not saying you should give everything up, move to a monastery, or live in the woods, but I dare you. Try living for a week without buying anything unnecessary. 1 month without posting anything to show off. Just a short stretch of time where you sit down and ask, if I took all the external stuff away, what's left inside? And if that answer feels empty, good. That means it's time to rebuild. Not with money, but with willpower, with discipline, with real values. Because when you live with depth, with truth, and with zero need to prove yourself, material things will come. But this time, you'll use them as tools, not let them turn you into a clown in a suit. And once materialism no longer owns you, you'll learn the most important thing of all, how to live fully in the present moment. No anxiety about losing things, no chasing a blurry future, no being haunted by past regrets. You live with what's right in front of you, and you know it's enough. But to live like that, there's one thing you have to learn first: gratitude for simply being alive. And that's what we'll talk about next. If you're ready, I'll continue with part 4, gratitude for the present. Not because it's trendy to slow down, but because tomorrow isn't promised. Not everyone has the patience to watch until the end, but those who do are always the ones who go further than the rest. If you're one of them, subscribe and like. We're on the same team. After you've let go, after material things no longer hold your leash, you begin to truly see what people vaguely call the present moment. I used to think living fully in the present was just a lifestyle, a trendy mindset. But after surviving enough chaos, I realized this. Living in the present isn't a spiritual choice. It's a survival reflex. Because when you've seen death brush right past your face, when you've held someone's hand and had to let go, knowing they'll never come back, when you've lost someone who was just having coffee with you yesterday, you understand. Tomorrow is a luxury, and the present is all that truly exists. No one taught me that. Life did, and it taught it the most brutal way, by taking things away, one by one, suddenly, without warning. And it left me alone with an unanswerable question: what if? That's when I started to change. Not in some feel-good way about cherishing every moment, like the crap you see printed on coffee mugs. I mean, really waking up to the tiny details of the day. A full meal, a genuine laugh, the sound of wind through the window, a text that gets answered, a dreamless night of sleep. I stopped taking that stuff for granted, because I've had days where I didn't want to open my eyes. Nights when I was awake at 3 a.m. with a blank mind, wishing everything would just vanish. Moments when I would have given anything for just a little peace inside my own head. So when things started to settle a bit, when I could still breathe, still had the strength to sit here and talk to you, I didn't see it as luck. I saw it as responsibility. A responsibility to live more decently, to be more present. To make good use of this one day I know I have, because I'm not sure tomorrow will come. That might sound heavy, but it's actually freedom. Because when you live like today is your last, you stop letting time slip into meaninglessness. You stop wasting hours arguing with people who don't matter. You stop chasing races with no finish line. You stop bleeding energy into things you can't control. You begin to choose more carefully. Do less, but go deeper. Say less, but mean it. Show up fewer places, but be fully there. And that's when your life gains depth. Not because you've become spiritual, but because you no longer have time for the shallow. One day, you're going to die. I'm not saying that to scare you or to throw around cheap philosophy. I'm saying it because it's a cold, merciless truth. And when you grasp that, not intellectually, but experientially, you start living differently. You stop postponing. You stop saying someday. You stop waiting for perfect. You move now. You say what you need to say. You hold on to who you need to hold. You let go of what needs to go. You stop living by society's schedule and start living by your internal clock, the countdown no one else can see. I know this may sound heavy for some, but I don't have time to speak softly anymore. We're losing our lives, hour by hour, minute by minute, because we keep thinking we still have time. I've seen too many people live like they're immortal. They push everything important to next week, next month, when things settle down. They forget life waits for no one. Opportunities don't repeat. People won't always be there. And if you don't live today right, one day you'll beg to go back, but you won't be able to. I once heard a dying man say, "I just wish I had realized earlier that the things that really mattered all happened in the most ordinary moments." And that line has haunted me ever since, because it's true. Your life won't be measured by how much money you made or how many titles you earned. It'll be measured by how many times you were truly present for yourself and for others. A morning without rushing, a meal without scrolling, a hug without calculation, a conversation without checking the time. Those things, that's life. And if you've ever hurt deep enough, you'll understand. You won't need a reminder. You'll start to pause. Say thank you before it's too late. Say sorry before your ego kills you. Let go of the small stuff to hold on to what actually matters. You'll stop in the middle of life's chaos just to take one deep breath and feel, I'm still here. I still have a chance. I still have time, not to waste, but to live right. And do you know what happens when you start living that way? You don't need to be happy all the time, but you'll have a quiet kind of peace, a hum that no one can take from you. Because it doesn't come from outside. It comes from the clarity you carry in every moment you truly live. And from that peace, something remarkable begins to grow. You start to really see other people. Not just their surface, but really see them. The pain they haven't named, the wounds no one's touched, the scars even they ignore. And that's when compassion returns. Not from pity, but from understanding. From looking at someone lost and not judging because you've been there. And you know, if you got a chance to turn around, they can too. But to see that clearly, to reach others that deeply, you have to pass one more threshold, the deepest level that few ever dare to enter, understanding yourself at the root. And that will be the final part I want to speak about, deep self-awareness. Not the trendy kind of self-discovery, but the brutal, fearless act of tearing off your mask, facing your inner darkness, and walking through it without flinching. If you're ready, we'll continue. After you learn to live in the present, after you stop chasing one thing and clinging to another, a question will naturally rise without anyone needing to ask. Who am I, really? Not your name, not your job, not the roles you play in society, but who you are when there's nothing left to wear. It's a simple question, but very few dare to face it. Because if you truly sit down, strip away every mask, every performance, every expectation placed on you, you'll discover something that sends a chill down your spine. You don't know yourself as well as you think. You know you're short-tempered. But do you know why? You know you worry too much. But have you ever asked what deep fear lies beneath that? You know you chase money, but have you ever honestly asked, what am I trying to prove and to whom? I used to avoid those questions, like most people. Too busy, focused on the future, no time. But the truth is, I avoided them because I knew if I looked deep enough, I'd have to face parts of myself I didn't want to see. The parts I buried, the parts I'm not proud of, the parts I built a whole life trying not to confront, until I had no choice. That was when nothing around me could distract me anymore. People left, goals collapsed, nothing outside to cling to. And in that moment, I could no longer run from myself. I started tracking every reaction. I began questioning every decision. I traced every action back to its root, not to beat myself up, but to understand. Really understand. And I realized most of what I'd done in life didn't come from clarity. It came from fear. I didn't choose the path I truly wanted. I chose the safe one. Not because I was smart, but because I was afraid of failing, afraid of being laughed at, afraid I wasn't good enough. I chased money, not because I wanted comfort, but because I couldn't stand the feeling of being less than when others succeeded and I didn't. I tried to be kind, not because I was gentle, but because I was afraid of upsetting people, afraid of being abandoned. And the deeper I went, the more I saw the truth. I wasn't free. I was being run by an old version of myself, a wounded kid from the past who was never healed but still calling all the shots in my life. Seeing that was the first step. But it wasn't enough. The real work was peeling back each layer bit by bit and rebuilding from the root. Not fixing the outside, rewiring the engine inside. I started changing how I made decisions. I stopped asking, will they approve? Will I be praised? What if I fail? And started asking, is this truly right for me? Does this reflect the values I choose to live by? If I died tomorrow, would I regret not doing this? From there, I began resetting my own standards, not based on society, not based on anyone's template. I chose for myself. And when you start choosing your life by your standards, even if few understand, you gain a strange kind of power. You stand firm even when everything around you shifts. You no longer need agreement to live truthfully. No longer need praise to know you're on the right track. No longer need the spotlight to feel valuable. You're clear. You're deliberate. You're not easily swayed. And that clarity, quiet, humble, is what makes you grounded, respected, and worth trusting. I used to think being a man of substance meant speaking well, leading boldly, standing out. Now I see it differently. A man of substance is someone who knows exactly what he's doing, why he's doing it, and owns the consequences without blame. It all starts with awareness. And awareness doesn't come from reading a bunch of books. It comes from facing yourself long enough without flinching, from asking hard questions and not dodging the answers. Are you living right? Are you doing what you truly believe matters? Are you proud of the person you're becoming? You don't have to answer to anyone, but if you can't answer yourself, don't ask why you keep feeling empty, restless, or like nothing is ever enough. And here's the beauty of it. When you start living from that place of clarity, pain stops being your enemy. It becomes a signal, a message. Life's way of showing you what needs to be adjusted, what needs to be let go, what needs to be faced. Every time you hurt, you learn something about yourself. Every disappointment reveals a blind spot. Every collapse gives you a chance to examine the foundation you were standing on. And if it's weak, you rebuild it stronger. Pain teaches you about you, if you're brave enough to listen. And once you understand yourself, reset your inner wiring and shed the performance to live as your real self. You don't need many reasons to feel grateful, because just being here, awake, more aware of who you are than yesterday, that alone is something to be thankful for every day. And that's the closed circle of those who've suffered deeply. Deep compassion, emotional control, detachment from materialism, presence in the now, and radical self-understanding. They're not perfect, but they're real. And when you're real, you're never lost. If you've made it this far, I don't expect you to agree with everything, but I hope you find the courage to start looking at yourself, honestly. Not to blame, but to break free. Because in the end, what makes a man unshakable isn't what he owns. It's what he no longer needs to prove. Thank you for being here. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, turn on notifications, and like this video. Don't forget to leave a comment so we can spread positivity together.